time? Yeah, me too. You know what, boys and girls? A lot of us think that American soldiers are the very best soldiers in the whole wide world. Isn't that right? Yeah. And we're proud of our soldiers, aren't we? Well, you know, we've seen all those G.I. Joe cartoons where we're the good guys and we always win. But you know who the best soldiers were during Jesus' time? It was the Roman army. And they weren't the good guys. They were the bad and the mean. The Romans had conquered the whole world back then, and their soldiers were the roughest, toughest guys around. And they didn't care who they hurt or who they killed. And I bet none of you would want to run into one of them, would you?
No way!
The leaders of the Roman army were called centurions. And these guys didn't mess around, and they meant business. And they were as tough as nails. And when Pilate ordered Jesus to be crucified on the cross, who do you think he gave the job to? You guessed it. It was a centurion. And today our story is about a centurion who was put in charge of putting Jesus to death. And he was a strong and he was a tough soldier. And he had seen lots of people die. But he could tell that there was something really different about Jesus. You know, Jesus was innocent and he hadn't done anything that deserved death. And you know something? The more the centurion stood watching Jesus on the cross, the more he felt sorry inside for what he had done.
Beyond doubt, this man was innocent.
All of a sudden, there was a huge earthquake.
Truly, this man was the Son of God.
Can you guess who was the very first person to believe in Jesus after his death? It was the centurion. This man was so impressed with Jesus that he was sure Jesus was who he claimed to be. He was the only Son of God. Later that day, a rich man who was a secret believer in Jesus came before Pilate to ask for the body of Jesus. He wanted to make sure that Jesus had a decent burial.
Procurator Pontius Pilate, I am Joseph of Arimathea.
Oh, I know you. You're one of the Sanhedrin. Well, you had your way. Jesus is crucified.
I ask for the body of Jesus.
Can't you even wait until he's dead?
But he is dead, sir.
I don't believe you. Jesus was a strong man. Guard! Where is the centurion in charge of the crucifixion?
He's here now, sir.
Jesus of Nazareth.
He is dead, sir. We made sure of it before we left the hill.
Why do you want his body?
I was his friend.
Friend? Now, after he's dead, I meet one of his friends. Yes. Take the body.
Thank you, sir.
Joseph of Arimathea. I would have saved him if I could. So, he's dead.
Sir, we killed an innocent man.
Don't you think I know that? But I was ordered to keep the peace in this miserable land.
Yes, sir.
He died for peace.
But the enemies of Jesus weren't satisfied. And they came to Pilate and asked that soldiers be sent to guard his grave, so that his disciples couldn't steal the body and then claim that he had risen from the dead. His enemies weren't taking any chances.
This tomb is now sealed by the authority of Rome. You two, keep watch all night, and don't fall asleep. I'll send you replacements at dawn.
None of us sleep. After watching all day?
Oh, come now. It's not like we're working. We are guarding a dead man.
Boy, were they in for a surprise. The soldiers didn't realize that the biggest miracle in all of history was about to take place, because that night there was a big earthquake and the ground underneath them started to rumble and shake. And the Bible tells us that the soldiers were so frightened that they fell to the ground and laid there paralyzed with fear. These big, tough soldiers fell over on their faces like dead men, and they were scared out of their wits. They had never seen anything like this. And an angel of the Lord came down, and his face looked so bright, like a lightning, and he rolled away the stone in front of the grave. Can you imagine that? Awesome! You know why the angel rolled away the stone? It wasn't to let Jesus out, because he had already risen, but it was so that the whole world could see the empty tomb and to realize that Jesus had conquered death. That's why. And for a long time, the soldiers laid on the ground, too scared to even move. And when they finally worked up enough courage to look inside the tomb, they just couldn't believe their own eyes.
The body's gone. You saw what happened. The gods have taken him.
Do you think Pilate is going to believe that?
Well, when the soldiers told their boss, the centurion, what had happened, he went straight to see Pilate, because the news of Jesus' resurrection was spreading all over town.
Yay!
Sir, the story flies through Jerusalem. Jesus is risen, they say. His apostles and several women have seen him and touched him.
Then arrest them. Arrest all of them. And stop them from telling those lies.
We can, sir. They've escaped into Galilee.
If your soldiers had done their duty...
They did their duty. But all the Roman legions could not have held Jesus of Nazareth.
You really believe it? You believe he was resurrected? Well, I don't believe it. I did not order the killing of the Son of God.
Pilate never did believe in Jesus, as far as we know. And he had all the same evidence and all the same proof of Jesus' resurrection as the centurion. And yet he had hardened his heart. And he was too proud to admit that he had made a mistake. But the centurion believed in Jesus with all of his heart. And someday you and I will see him in heaven. Isn't that great? You know, God loves to do impossible things. And only God could take a rough, tough centurion in charge of putting Jesus on the cross and make him the very first believer after Jesus' death. And you know what? If God can change this man's heart, just think what he can do in the lives of your friends who don't even know him yet. Isn't that right?